Since this is the final assignment for the semester, I've made a few changes. If you open the file, the folder for week 6, and you've looked, I've made some changes since then. I've eliminated one assignment because I realize really we are down to the very last of the semester. This course closes December 10th, which is a Sunday. You will not have access to it after that point. I will not have access to it probably after that point, at least to be able to do any type of work. So we need to wrap everything up if we can in the next week and a half, roughly. So I've made a couple of changes. Now again, this is in case you've looked online earlier and you've looked over the guidelines for this last assignment. I've changed the timetable, okay? And that's part of the reason that I eliminated one assignment. We are not going to have a live session because, unbeknownst to me, we were going to have, I was going to call a live session for tonight and record it for those who couldn't attend, but we don't have that capability in eCampus, and I did not realize that until I started trying to set up a session on a WebEx platform, and there is no WebEx platform. So that's not going to happen. That's the reason I'm recording this video instead. So under process and schedule on the second page of your guidelines, I'm going to have to eliminate that bullet. Now the first draft of this paper is going to be due Monday. If you cannot get it to me Monday, get it to me when you can. I will leave the Dropbox open. But it's very important that I check your draft on this particular assignment and give you feedback because A, I checked for unintentional plagiarism, B, I check for accurate documentation formats, C, I make sure it's an argument, look for anything that would possibly result in a failing grade, and I try and give you some information on how to fix it. Now, if the draft that you give me is really in good shape, then I'll try and help you fix that as well, if there are any adjustments that need to be made, okay? But I need to have the paper by that Friday, all right? So my goal is to have your feedback available as early to you as possible. So as soon as you get the draft in, I can give you feedback on it, and then, but I need the paper by Friday because again, the course closes on Sunday, and we want to make sure, I'm not sure I've got those dates correctly, 4/7, closes the following Monday. So I want to make sure that I have the paper in time to grade it, and for that grade to be reflected in your grade so that you can see what you made in the course. All right, so let's go over some specifics. If we were in a face-to-face course, I would give you these guidelines, and I would highlight certain points and go over certain ideas. All right, so this particular assignment is 150 points. It's weighted that heavily because in many ways, to me, it's your final exam. I don't give a final in here. Really, this paper is it, okay? So it takes more time, more effort, and it kind of shows me everything that you have learned this semester about how to, for example, have a thesis and stick to it, by how to use good transitions between your paragraphs and among your ideas, how to develop an introduction that gets a reader's attention, and then of course getting into argumentation, which is the lesson for this week, how to have a certain viewpoint and support it with good research, how to use good research methodology, how to use APA documentation forms. And I realize part of the difficulty in taking the course in 7.5 weeks, which is what you've done, essentially we are going over in 7.5 weeks what normally would be covered in a 15-week class. Now again, I streamline it as much as I can. I take out assignments that, although helpful in a normal 15-week class, you just really don't have time for in 7.5 weeks, while still trying to keep the guts of the class and make sure that we meet the requirements established at the state level for what you have to know in order to succeed in this course, all right? Now, the length is a little bit longer this time. It should be between 1,000 and 1,250 words. A little bit longer is not a problem. A little bit shorter is not a problem. A lot shorter and you haven't done enough research. A lot longer and you're not controlling your research, where your thesis is too broad. and more on that in a second. You need to take a side on a clearly debatable issue. When you read the section in your textbook, it emphasizes that argumentation is a form of persuasion, but it's not an opinion paper. It has to do with trying to appeal to logic, all right? And I'm not going to get into that a lot. I gave you a PowerPoint that talks about, and it's kind of based on Aristotle, who codified, who made sort of guidelines for how to successfully argue. And among those, he established 3 different types of appeals. Appeals to emotions, the heart, appeals to the intellect, which is the head, logos, logical appeals, and then appeals to ethics, which ethos, which has to do with our shared belief systems, depending on your audience, a common set of standards, and so forth. In argumentation, mainly think about being in a court of law, and what you're trying to do is weigh down one side. If you think in terms of scales, Lady Justice, right? And you're trying to weigh down one side through evidence, facts, eyewitness testimony, examples, personal testimony, if that applies here. You want to go beyond opinion. That's the thing about opinions. Everybody has one, right? So you need a debatable issue. And debatable, and I really emphasize this, because some topics students will think are debatable, but quite frankly, there's no research for one side of it. Okay? It's just based on this is how I feel, therefore I think it's true. And in argumentation, that does not work. All right? So what you want to make sure is that you're choosing a topic that is reliable, there's reliable, unbiased, factual support for both sides. Emphasis on the unbiased, emphasis on the reliable, emphasis on the factual. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be some big topic, and I have eliminated gun control, capital punishment, and abortion, primarily not because I have strong opinions, I may or may not, but that's beside the point. It's because I've been teaching argumentation for over 30 years, and a lot of times those are the issues that students go to right away. Now, there's a lot of new things that are kind of happening, at least with 2 of these issues, in the public square and politics. And at some point, I may open those back up again. I just got tired of reading those papers, to be honest with you, so that's why they're eliminated for right now. Please notice, do not recycle an old research paper that you've done. If there are any hints that that's happened, the paper will not be successful. Notice that you need at least 4 separate sources that you find, and one of those can be field research. Now, field research is something that it's a type of research that you conduct yourself. And there are 3 primary forms of field research. Truthfully, you don't really have time. In a 15-week course, if students want to do their own research, they do have time. But I want you to be aware that this is what field research is, and I'm uploading a PowerPoint in the Week 6 folder just to kind of go over that for you. But one type is observation, where you actually sit and observe and take notes. And for example, I had a student who wanted to write about using a particular form of discipline in child care. And so she sat in on several pre-K classes and took notes and observed the types of discipline used with the children there, and then wrote about it. Another is to interview an expert usually, or interview someone who has experience in a particular topic. And if that person has good credentials, then you would interview them, you would collect information, and you could use that in your paper. The third type of field research is is doing a survey. You come up with a set of questions, you determine an audience. Usually it should be an unbiased audience. With social media especially, it's easy to do surveys these days. But again, I don't think you have time for this. But I want you to be aware that that is a type of legitimate research. Now notice, don't rely completely on direct quotations, all right? You should paraphrase or summarize most of your information. And by paraphrasing, it means that you work almost line by line with the information, but put it in your own words. Now, you still need to give credit. You just don't have to put quotation marks around it unless it's copied 5 or more words from the original in the same order. Okay? And I'll show you some examples of this. I've got a sample paper that I am going to upload too. But normally, beginning writers who are learning to research in middle school and in high school, all they know to do, really all that you're taught to do, is to directly quote, right? And direct quotations, please hear me, are important. If you're incorporating an expert's information, you let him or her talk by, copying them word for word. If you want to emphasize a point, if you can't rewrite something in your own words without losing something in the translation, those are all good times to use direct quotations. But please remember that you need to document it with an in-text citation that's based off of your references on your bibliographic entries. If you didn't know the information before you read it, you must give credit to the source. Okay, that's usually the most common form of unintentional plagiarism that I see. Students don't understand enough to realize that it's not just copying words; it's actually using somebody else's ideas. So we're gonna, when we look at the sample paper, I'll review that for you really quickly. But do use direct quotations. Just use them sparingly and intentionally, and all information you get from the source, from different sources, must be documented. I'm working on your definition rights now. I will be sure, and you need to go back and look at them and double check the documentation, especially in any notes that I make. If for some reason you make below a 30, and that's out of 50 points, 30 or lower, I'm giving you the opportunity to revise that definition right for credit, and giving you some notes about how to fix it. Okay, so please be aware of that. But do look back at your definition right as soon as I have them finished, so that you'll know how to make some changes. All right, we're using the same format. You don't need a title page or anything like that. You do need a title. You need to have a clear claim. Claim and argumentation means thesis. It's your controlling idea. It normally should be at the beginning of the paper, the last sentence in your introduction. That's normally where a thesis appears. But it is possible to actually end the introduction with a question, so you're suggesting an idea or direction that you want to go, and then the actual claim will not appear until the conclusion. It's like you build your case first, and then you put your claim in the conclusion. Often the more controversial your subject is, you're more likely to sort of, because you don't want to offend readers right off or turn them off to your topic. Because remember, the point of argumentation is to persuade somebody to at least listen to you. So the emphasis is on the audience, not on you, the writer, as far as how you feel about something. The emphasis is on trying to reason with an audience to get them to change their mind, get them to take some action, get them to agree with you, at least get them to consider your perspective, if that makes sense. And when I say a lot of emphasis on you, I'm saying your perspective, your claim, and so forth, but really you should not appear in this paper. Now obviously it's your topic and you feel a certain way about it, but I feel, and those types of things actually water down an argument, because this is not about feeling, and it's not about your thoughts. Really, the only time that I tell students that they should use I in a paper, in an argumentation paper, is if they have direct experience or are authorities on the topic. Okay. Please use standard American English. The main way that I see students kind of dodging this is either by directly addressing the readers using YOU second person. All right, that's casual, that's conversational, that's a little too informal. Or by using a lot of contractions. Isn't, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't, and so forth. All right, again, those are informalities, so try and avoid overuse of contractions. You do need to evaluate your sources, and I'm going to give you some hints about this in just a second. We are using APA documentation format. Please remember that Purdue OWL site, OWL, I think it's in the week 4 folder, maybe week 5. it essentially has the formats. They're written out for you, and you just sort of have to plug in the information. They're also, I think it's easybib.com and maybe noodletools.com have free sites that will actually do your, you can set it to APA documentation styles, and they will actually do the setup for you, but you still need to verify that they're doing it correctly. Please note you must use accurate in-text citations. I can't pass a plagiarized paper. Avoid fallacies. The fallacies assignment will open next week. It simply walks you through all of these different types of faulty reasoning and argumentation and asks you to sort of look those up and find examples of that. So that will be your last assignment for me in addition to working on this paper. All right, so let's move from this to a sample research paper, and then I'm going to show you, make some suggestions about how to go about finding information. This is a student paper of mine. I've taken her name off. She was writing about advertising prescription drugs puts consumers at risk. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go to her references page. This is what a references page should look like. Now, that title should have been, it should be centered. That looks a little bit right of center, but that's okay. You title the page references, you don't bold it, it doesn't need to be a larger font, you don't underline it, it just looks like that. And then every source that you mention, and remember that you must have a minimum of 4. If you have, it's fine with me if you have more than 4, okay? If it takes more than 4 to adequately write the paper, feel free to continue to do research as you have time. But you must use a minimum of 4 different sources someplace in the paper, okay, to build your case. Now, a couple of things to notice here. First, this is called a hanging indentation, okay? A hanging indentation means the first line sticks out and every line after that is indented. Now, let me show you a little hint here. In Microsoft Word, here in this middle area, there's a little box in the right hand corner. If you select that little box, okay, it will open up, and here in the middle under special you can set up a hanging indentation. Currently it defaults to none, but you can set up hanging and it will automatically do that for you until you go back and take it off again. Okay. So that'll set up the paper for you. All right, so coming back, first thing, you want the first line to stick out. After that, notice that it's alphabetized. A references page, it's a form of bibliography, right? And if you learned MLA documentation, the Modern Language Association, which is what most high school teachers teach because they're English teachers, and English is one of the humanities, and humanities use Modern Language Association documentation formats. There are lots of different documentation formats. There are 4 major ones, okay? APA, MLA, Chicago Style Manual, and Turabian. And Chicago Style is used with publications, and Turabian is used usually with master's thesis, and if you go for a doctorate, that's the style of documentation that you use if you're at the doctorate level, okay? Just so that you're aware, there are quite a few different types of documentation. APA is the American Psychological Association, and I think I uploaded a video earlier that kind of explained it. But the bibliography does 2 things. One, it gives full credit to your sources. So if I am reading your paper and I want to go and find the same source that you found, then all I should have to do, if you set up your in-text citations correctly, you put whatever comes first, right? Whatever, and I don't know why this is highlighted, by the way. I must have used it in another video. You take whatever comes first, all right, and then the year of publication, and that's what goes in the in-text citations. So in this case, it would be Callie and Springen in the in-text citation in the paper itself. You don't need the initials, the first initials, and you don't need the complete date, just the year. Okay. And so if I'm reading your paper and you've set it up correctly, all I should have to do, okay, I've read this article by Callie and Springen, come to you reference them, I want to maybe see more about that. All I should have to do is to come to the references page, and the setup, the formatting is for the audience, okay, to make it easy on the audience to find something. So that's the reason the first lines stick out. That's the reason it's alphabetized. I realize if you've only got 4 sources, it doesn't matter much. They're all right there. It's not that hard to see. But quite frankly, the more advanced your education, if you continue to go on, if you're going to a 4-year institution, or if you continue on even with graduate degrees, the work that you do, you will do more and more research, and you'll have more and more source material. And that's where this really does matter. So it's good to kind of know the guidelines now. This particular student chose to have, I think she had, 8 different sources, something like that. Callie and Springen, that's what would go in the in-text citation. This is a long, because there is no author, what you put is the actual title of the article, and you only capitalize an APA documentation. You don't use quotation marks around it. You only capitalize the first word after a colon, and any proper nouns, okay? But I don't have to put, in the paper itself, you don't have to put the entire title, just the first couple of words in the year of publication, okay? Hungerford, 2009. McCurt and Plagnano, 2013. Now the guideline is if you have 3 authors, you include all 3. If you have more than 3, you use, and this is what this example is showing, the first one and then ET.AL. Now that's for 4 or more authors, all right? You just put the first one and then ET.AL, that stands for in Latin, and others, all right? If there is no date given, and especially when you're dealing with websites, sometimes it's very difficult to find a date. What you put in the parentheses following the authors or the title, if there were no author, is N period D period. Okay. You do not, all right, this is a no. You never, ever, 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 ever put NA for no author. I realize that it kind of seems like that would make sense, but you actually never do that. Okay. Instead, you go with what comes first after the year. Ordinarily, if you had an author, and that would be the title. Okay. All right. So I hope that makes sense. Again, alphabetized, hanging indentation, and then also, this is how retrieval information should look. Retrieved the date you visited the site from. Now, this is a database. If you actually have gone to an online site, then you need to copy the web address. So retrieved the date you visited the site from, and then the web address. All right, that indicates to the reader who's looking at your references page that I didn't hold this source in my hand. I found it online, and this is where you too can find it. Okay, you don't use the word online. You don't use the word web or anything like that. That's, MLA I think still uses web. You actually include the address. And the reason that you include the retrieval date, especially in online sources, is because you're indicating, web pages change. They're edited, they're deleted, and so what you're showing is on this day when I visited this site, this is what it said. All right, then in the paper itself, I want to show you a couple of things. The first time she mentions her source, according to Callie and Springen, so remember that was one of her sources, because she mentions their name as part of the integrity of the sentence, all she has to put here is 1997. She doesn't have to repeat it again. And then this is her, what we call a signal phrase. She's setting up a direct quotation, and here's the direct quotation. All right. Next page. what happened here, and the reason she's repeating this is because she's got her direct quotation. Then she has information that she's put in her own words. She has to indicate, though, that this too came from this source. Don't assume that the reader is going to don't leave it to the reader to try and figure out where you got the information. All right? Notice it doesn't have to go after every sentence, but there's sort of a logic to it. But what this indicates is what comes before this comes from this. All right? One of the most recent drugs is Vioxx by Merck. All of this information is taken from, she basically paraphrased information that she'd said before. Then she's got a direct quotation here according to the article, Vioxx recall, and then here's the date because she mentions the article. If she had not mentioned it in the text, then what would go in parentheses is Vioxx recall 2004. All right? That indicates there's no author. According to the FDA's website, 2015, the FDA was the corporate author there. Okay. So I'll upload this paper as one that you can look at. It's not perfect. There are some issues here and there, but overall it was a successful attempt at a paper. The last thing I want to show you are some ways to go about finding source material. Probably you've been told not to use Wikipedia, and that's true. You shouldn't build a paper from using Wikipedia as a source, and the reason for that is because Wikipedia, wikis are public sites that are built by the public, basically, okay? So any of us can contribute to Wikipedia. As a matter of fact, you may have gone to a page in Wikipedia at some point on a particular topic, and you'll see that it says that this page is under development. If you're, have some expertise in this area, please contribute, blah, blah. And what Wikipedia does is it hires editors to go through and double check what's posted on there. But the reality is that you never know from day to day whether it's been edited or not. So again, the information may or may not be sound. I use it too. It's a great starting place. But you don't want to quote from Wikipedia in your paper. But here's what Wikipedia is good for. Let's say that I want to write about self-driving cars. And honestly, I don't know enough about them right now to know which side on this issue I fall, but I'm scared of it. So I'm going to try and inform myself and then come up with an argument. All right. So I'm going to put self-driving cars here and do my search. And here's what Wikipedia is really good for. First of all, it can give you some search terms. All right. A self-driving car. Let me see if I can get out of this. Maybe later. Okay. Sorry, that took a minute. Self-driving car, it can give you some additional terms to look for. It's also known as autonomous car, driverless car, robotic car. So for one thing, it can give you additional search terms, keywords, right, when you're looking. It can also give you some ideas, but quite frankly, Wikipedia is a secondary source built from primary sources. So if the information is good, it's built upon a lot of other source material. And the source material are the primary sources, right? So if you scroll down to the end of a particular page, look at this, okay? Under the references here, it gives you all of these potential sources that may be more reliable, or that should be more reliable than just the overall Wikipedia page. Wired, ZD.net, now I'm not sure what that is, but notice when I hover over it, it's giving me, it's a business news tech website owned and operated by Red Ventures. I'm going to show you how to continue evaluating a particular source. Reuters is a news organization, right? So it's usually fact-based, it's reliable. So I can find some sources from here. So that's one good thing that Wikipedia is used for. Another, I did a general search on, well, let me do it again, on self-driving cars. Alright, obviously I did it before. So I'm going to scroll through here. Wikipedia usually comes first. The synopsis. I'm not quite sure what is an autonomous car. Wait, Blue Book, I know what that is. I don't, here, you know, this is a .gov, and as you saw from your lesson on evaluating source material, .gov can be considered reliable. So this could be a good source for me. U.S. News and World Report, another good source. 10 cars that are almost self-driving. It sounds more fact-based, but at least it may give me some additional information. Now here's one that I don't know anything about, the zebra. Okay. By the way, avoid blog posts in building papers. Avoid, you know, any of us can have blogs, just like any of us can have .coms. Any of us can honestly have .orgs. All it takes is a little money to purchase the domain name. So you've got to use a little bit of common sense, because you, again, to build a really good argument, you want to work with really good information. So let's just say, how do self-driving cars work? So I've already told you I don't know much about it, so I want an overview. So I'm going to select this, and the date's good, right? It's recent, November 1st. But I don't know much about the zebra. Come to the source. And one of the things that ways you can tell, Susan Meyer, all right, so obviously this is a hyperlink because it's blue. I'm going to select it. And this tells me a little bit about this author. She's a licensed insurance agent. She's worked as a writer and editor. She currently specializes in producing. Her background's in technical communication, credentials. All right, so she's an insurance agent. Obviously, insurance agents have some investment into whether or not these cars are reliable. So, I'm beginning to think this might work. But I want to go back because I'm not familiar with the company she's writing for. So one of the things you want to do when you come up against a website or a group, an organization, a company with which you're unfamiliar, is find out about them. And almost always they'll have something called About Us. They'll at least give you some general information. So About Us, I'm going to select. Make insurance shopping simpler, complicated. The zebra searches all top insurance companies in one place. You can compare the cost, coverage, and you read your home. Well, okay. So I know I'm dealing with insurance here. Is there anything else? I'm going to scroll down through here. Anything else that would show me that this is useful? Your speeding tickets, potential benefits. Well, this is helpful. So overall, I kind of get the sense that this may be a source that would work for me, and that seems to have some professionals working for it, and definitely I could if I include the information I pay for, I can say insurance specialists see the following benefits in driving. If I'm going to build a paper that argues that we should embrace, self-driving cars. All right. All right. I hope that makes sense. There is one final thing I want to show you to get you started, and then if you have any questions, again, we're at the end of this. So if you have any questions for me whatsoever, please don't hesitate to email me with those questions. I want to show you. There's a site called Google Scholar. It's taking a minute. Now, it's a search engine that tends to have more scholarly articles. Okay, so I'm going to hence the name, right? Self-driving cars. With these particular sources, I notice that I can narrow down my searches to since 2022. I only want articles, include citations, self-driving cars, a survey. Select that. Abstract is a summary. By the way, if you find an abstract you have trouble understanding it, if the language is too complicated, if it's written at that formal level, that means you're not the audience for it. I would try and find something else. But one of the good things about Google Scholar is that it will do the citation for you. So if we go back, cite, APA, all you have to do is copy and paste. All right? Put it in your format, alphabetize, use your hanging indentation. But it will actually do the APA formats for you. So it's a handy tool to have. All right, I hope that gets you started. Please get on it. Don't procrastinate on this one. Finish strongly.